What has been your closest moment to death? Hi guys, it's Em. Thank you so much for your support lately. I love reading your comments and getting to interact with everyone. Seriously, it means the world to all of us. So truly thank you. Okay, now let's get right into the spooky stories. Story 1. Back in 2008, I learned how to manufacture raw opium from the supermarket. Before you ask, this method has all but disappeared because other people learned about it, and suddenly it's impossible to find the right quality at grocery stores. Around 2015, I started bulk ordering the raw ingredients that came in a giant burlap sack. 150 pounds was roughly 100 to 200 milligrams morphine doses. Everything was eyeballed and approximate, however, but I came up with this number after many years of abusing various opioids, and with high-quality ingredients, this number is close. Well, this was also the easiest time to buy drugs right here off Reddit, so I was purchasing large quantities of benzodiazepine powder. Imagine a Xanax bar, which is a very strong 2 milligram alprazolam dose, but realize 99.9% of it is filler. For $40 to $70, I could get a gram of pure powder, so roughly 500 Xanax bars. I was extremely far gone at the time and had huge stashes of various benzos, PCP, and ketamine analogs, LSD analogs, and tryptamines that you can think of as mushroom analogs. I was in a state of perpetual binging. I also had a ton of stimulants I would use to keep me awake after taking insane benz doses, 20 milligrams or worse, and insane morphine and opium doses. Stuff started to get really dark and I lost contact with basically everyone in life. I had an adult doll I would use when blasted off my head, and for some reason that lifeless thing is a horrifying thought these days. Don't get an adult doll as a man unless you want to lose all will to pursue women. When I started doing the stipulants, I was staying up for 48 hours, then crashing for about 10 to 14 hours. I think the stimulant I was abusing was fairly weak, though I had some stronger ones I ran out of that are still popular today. I'm just glad it wasn't met because I don't think I'd still be alive. After a few weeks or months of the schedule staying up every other night, my crashes hit harder and harder. I would almost always be tweaking so hard I forgot about opioids for a while and I'd start withdrawing, and it was time to make another batch. Combining benzos, opioids, and normal doses can be deadly. I was taking 200 to 400 milligrams morphine with 10 times the max prescribed dose of benzos and crashing on stems. I would wake up after passing out on my desk with my cat meowing at me and completely unable to move. I remember laying there moaning and screaming while trying to get my legs to work again and stand up. It would take me 20 to 30 minutes sometimes just to stand up. Really horrible crap. It all came to an end when I was charged with a DOI that I actually beat, as well as my right hand getting diagnosed with something called Saturday night palsy, where I couldn't lift my hand for 6 months. I also herniated 3 discs in my lower back that have not fully recovered. Luckily, my hand is fine and I am very active, but I have back pain and I imagine eventually I will have problems with it. I stay in good shape these days, but still have issues. Benzos and opioids are an insanely deadly combo, and what I was doing was suicidal. I'm confident that I'd have died within a month if I didn't go to rehab, and I imagine that a few of those times I was on the floor, I was barely a few milligrams of this or that away from death. OP, congrats on being able to work through your addiction. Seriously, that is something you should never try to diminish. I don't do stuff this hard, but I do live in a city where recreational lettuce is allowed, so I'll do that like every few months or something. But one time, I got some that was laced with something else, and it was genuinely the same feeling of having random paralysis in parts of your body. It's legitimately terrifying because your body just shut down and wouldn't move for ages. So I can't imagine what it would have been like if I did what OP had. Story 2. August 2020 during COVID. Had some shortness of breath and fatigue for several days. Asked my wife to drive me to a nearby hospital. Thought it might be COVID. She dropped me off as you couldn't stay at a hospital then. They took me back immediately, found I was in talk, put me on amidrone to slow down heart rate. It didn't work, so they told me they would have to use defibrillators to shock it back into the rhythm. I said, okay, but can I call my wife first and let her know? I called her and she said, okay, I'll come back up to the parking lot. They shocked me and I was not completely out. It was super painful, but then I just blacked out. I went into fib and then had no pulse. After 20 minutes, they shocked me 4 more times while doing CPR and were able to bring me back. I was intubated but could communicate via whiteboard. That night, I went into cardiogenic shock. I was transferred to a heart hospital in Norfolk, Virginia. I was sedated. They did a catheter and biopsy, and my condition continued to deteriorate, and doctors told my wife to gather kids to come say their goodbyes. They all came in by the good graces of an amazing executive at the hospital, who got them PPE clothing and equipment apartment since visits were not allowed because COVID had not been ruled out. 24 hours later, my condition improved, but I was sedated for the next 5 days. When I woke up, I of course had no idea what was going on or what had happened, and for the next few days was suffering from ICU delirium, with massive hallucinations. Some were disturbing and really scary. Some of course were goofy, and family reminds me of them today. I eventually was diagnosed with cardiac sarcoidosis, which is fairly rare and not easy to diagnose. I had an ICD defibrillator/pacemaker implanted. 2 weeks after I'd gone in, I went home. It wasn't until the ride home that my wife kind of filled me in on what had happened. Not everything, of course, that came out later, especially the part about people saying goodbye. The doctors were amazing, of course, but my family even more so. My children came from different parts of the US to be with me and visited multiple times a day. I have the group text of their conversation, and their courage and good humor in the face of such doubt is inspiring to me. For me, it's difficult to imagine. I mean, I slept most of it. Sorry for a long note, saw a topic and felt I had to get it off my chest. Story 3. Nearly drowned in a river on holiday in Australia when I was 13. Lots of people on either side of the river, so I thought it was safe to swim across when I got caught in a current. I didn't scream because I was embarrassed. Like, genuinely, I thought I was gonna die, but was still too socially anxious to make any noise. But I was trying to swim against a current, and I just couldn't. I managed to wedge myself between 2 rocks in the middle of the river, but the current was literally dragging me backwards. I was staying with my great aunt and uncle, who started to realize something was wrong, but it all happened so fast. I was losing strength so fast. It's crazy. I was scrapping trying to get purchased on the rock with my nails, but I could feel my fingertips slipping as I was dragged backwards because they were so smooth from the current and it was so strong. I used the last of my strength to turn around and push myself off from the rocks. Thankfully, I managed to push myself out of the current, and the push off carried me to the edge of the river, where my great aunt and uncle ran across to check if I was okay. I was in shock and still socially anxious, so I tried to play it off, but I was shaking from adrenaline. I think they knew how serious it was because it was time for everyone to go home after that. Also, I tried to kill myself at 16 with an overdose of paracetamol/antidepressant/ whatever we had in the bathroom. Spent the night in excruciating stomach pain and threw up all over myself. My body was on the floor until my mom found me in the morning, still conscious, and drove me to the hospital. Was put on a floor to protect my liver and spent a week in the hospital. Well, that was an extreme jump from story to story. OP, I'm happy you're still with us today, as that's what is truly important. I've been in those dark places, and it's hard to explain, but a lot of people don't find their will to live until they're there. If you guys need help, please reach out. I'm not sure of other countries, but the US number is 988. Please stay with us, as there's always someone who needs you. Story 4. It was February 26, 1993, and I was working in IT for a Forex company in the World Trade Center. I recall it was a Friday during Lent, and I had absent-mindedly ordered the Philly cheesesteak. I said to myself, if there's a God, he'll forgive my stupidity of eating meat on a Friday. So I began to eat, and then what felt like a concentrated earthquake exploded in the parking lot basement, its waves causing the building to sway and oppose the building. My first thought was we were hit by a plane. My mom had always told me a story of World War II bombers striking the Empire State Building. So that's why I thought about planes. Nobody panicked. The PA system worked and they said to stay at your desks. But guys we worked with who had been on lunch break in the underground interactive plaza called us and said someone bombed the path train. Things were still calm until someone opened a stairwell door and smoke came in. Then they panicked. We were on the 55th floor. Somewhere amongst whomever it was decided that we should go down the stairs. I was the only person with a flashlight, so I had everyone form a line behind me, each with their left hand on the left shoulder of the person in front of them. Then I held the flashlight over my head, so those in the back could see, and led about 150 people down 55 flights of stairs. And it took Apex 1 HR 15 minutes. That's the closest I've come to where someone tried to kill me, but it's not the closest I've come to dying. That's private. Story 5. A couple years back when I was in college, we arrived drunk to a party in a block of flats. The apartment was on the 4th or 5th floor, and we had missed the main group going in, and no one was answering the buzzer, so I thought we were missing out. My friend spotted an open window on the stairwell a few floors up, and at first we started throwing little stones up, thinking someone might hear it. But eventually, I got the great idea to have Spider-Man climb up outside and go in the window, so I made it no problem. Then I ran down the stairs and let my buddy in as well. Thought nothing of it. My friend, on the other hand, kept telling everyone what he had seen. The following day we were walking past, and I was sober at that stage, and he points over, looks at the window you climbed in last night, and it was like a full 3 floors off the ground over a cement ground floor. If I had slipped at all, I would have been flour pizza. Drunk folks are idiots, and I was one of them. Opie and I are 2 very different type of drunks. I prefer to get Taco Bell and watch news bloopers, and this guy likes to pretend they're Peter Parker. Story 6. I ate a ton of sweet candy, and the next day I felt a bit weird. Eventually threw up in a massive ball of the semi-digested candy that got lodged in my throat and prevented me from breathing. I was on my own, and the only thing I could do was slam myself back first into the wall of my hotel room and swallow to try and dislodge it. Eventually it released back into my stomach and I could breathe again for about 30 seconds. Then it happened again. Same thing again. But this time I'm really freaking scared. I was in a hotel room in Berlin all on my own. And here I'm about to choke to death on some Mauam. The Aldi version though, because I eat like a freaking pelican. No one will find me for 2 days if I cannot save myself. So there I am, back humping the wall until dislodged for the second time. I fell to the floor in tears. Since then I've understood the importance of chewing food and I no longer eat molds. Story 7. Got caught on a mountain at 14,000 feet, and a storm suddenly came in. Nothing expected in the forecast. And I was on the other side of a Class 3 traverse with a 300 feet drop when it started snowing and clouds moved in. I couldn't go back the way I came without possibly falling 300 feet in and splattering. I didn't have to go down the other side, so I had to wing it and try to get off the mountain and make my way down. I luckily did get down, hence I can post here. But it took hours and I was near hypothermic and had a bunch of near misses on my way down. Almost fell off a cliff, got temporarily rim-rocked, and somehow figured out how to get out of that. And had an encounter with a moose when I got down to Kankei. Oh, and my phone died on the way up, because I was an idiot and forgot to turn it off. Wouldn't have helped anyway as I had no service. Story 8. When I was 18, I was working out of town as a cook in a hotel in the middle of nowhere. I started feeling really sick the night before, so I told my coworker I'm calling in sick for the morning shift. The owner called my room in the morning, calling me a liar and to come to work. As I walked into the lobby where the owner and all of the other employees were standing, my lungs decided to just shut down. And I couldn't breathe in at all for 15 seconds, and I collapsed. And then they decided to start working again. I made the owner drive me to the hospital in a snowstorm after that. I ended up catching a mutated form of pneumonia, which further mutated into another disease which none of the doctors could figure out what it was. I went into a coma for 10 days. I always wondered if it would have been different if I didn't walk down in the morning. Was what the boss did an absolute jerk move? Heck yeah. Did it also end up probably saving OP's life? Also yes. It's so interesting that your lungs had shut down though, but my guess is you had some type of fluid build that ended up getting stuck in your airways, weren't able to open enough. Happy to hear you're doing better and got to the hospital in time. Story 9. I was skiing along the area boundary on the Nevada side of Heavenly Valley in 1982. I was skiing on a gentle slope along the ropes and the whole slope cracked. I had started a huge avalanche and I was in the center. I didn't panic but rather ride with it for a few moments. The stress on my body was insane. It was trying to rip me in half. I ended up tangled in some very large trees as the waterfall of snow, maybe 50 yards wide, around me. The tree I was against started to crack. I was screwed. Then it was over. Just like that, from the brink to calm. I still had my equipment and was able to ski right back to the run. Huge bruises for weeks. The purple kind. Don't ski alone and don't be greedy. Story 10. Pain in my side for a few days. Nothing I couldn't handle. Pain went away overnight, so I assumed I'd pulled a muscle and went on with life. A few more days go by and I'm feeling incredibly sick. I had an appointment for blood work, so I figured I asked the doctor why I felt so sick. We were told the doctor can't see you today, but we advise you to go to the emergency room if you're asking for medical attention. It was right around the corner, so I said frick it and went in. After many tests on a finger and my butt, doctors said my appendix had burst several days ago and my body was going septic. Emergency surgery. In the recovery room, the surgeon told me if I didn't come in today, I wouldn't have come in tomorrow. I always tell patients to be their own advocate, even if it's difficult. You know your body best, and if something doesn't feel right, you need to make it known. I know firsthand just how understaffed emergency rooms are, but it's always better to be safe than sorry, stuck in an ER waiting room than to be in the morgue. Story 11. My school bus got hit by a bin truck after the negligent bus driver pulled out when it wasn't clear. The truck hit the front of the bus, pretty much blowing the whole front section away. The bus then rolled onto its side. I can still remember the huge noise of the bus rolling over and my friend landing on me in the front of the bus catching fire. The bin truck was on its side maybe 50 yards further up the road. Somehow the bus driver survived, but I remember seeing him covered in blood. If he had pulled out a split second later, the bin truck would have struck us in the middle of the bus, and myself and undoubtedly other children would have been killed. Story 12. Paddleboarding in the middle of the lake when a thunderstorm rolls in. Waves pick up and lightning strikes, so I get separated from my group, lose balance, and fall off. I get stuck under the board trying to hold on, but it's too slippery and I can't flip myself onto it. Eventually, I kind of started giving up and let myself float. A wave helps me flip it enough and I find the thin thing to hold on to. So I sit there stranded till my friends find me. I was like 14 and had a specific fear of being in water alone. Can't even take baths any alone. I've been close to drowning countless times, even when I'm with people. Just bad luck. OP, I would suggest moving as far inland as you can with the luck you have. I'm not the strongest swimmer, so you will never catch me going farther than I can stand comfortably. Granted, I'm 5'2", so that's barely beyond the shore. Story 13. One time when I was 16, 17-ish, I went to a cabin party in a secluded area near a falls up in the hills. We all got messed up and someone had the idea to go for a walk through the dark. "Follow me," I hear the host say. "Hold up, I gotta pee real bad." I walk about 6 steps off the path and someone screams, "Stop." So I did, of course. They come up and shine their phone flashlight for me to see I was a step away from probably a 100-foot rocky ravine. Don't know who you were specifically, but thanks for saving my life. Now when I drink, I like to be home. Story 14. Rat poison tastes horrible. I had a bit of rat poison wanting to end my life. I'd fallen in my own eyes. I was 11, a good kid with fictional and idiotic principles. I hadn't taken enough though, rookie. So try as I hard, I wasn't going. But I did have my life flash before my eyes. Childish realizations, stopping parents' faces. A cab driver saw me all drunk and crawling in an alley and took me to a hospital. Fast forward several years, I want to talk to that child, Morgan Freeman style. Knock a bit of sense in him. In hindsight, that experience was exciting, emotional trauma, and a boatload of feelings aside. Story 15. Mixed alcohol with painkillers after a dental procedure. Woke up to find myself gasping for air, just avoided respiratory depression, and probably dying in my sleep. A la Heath Ledger. Do not mix alcohol and painkillers. Most recently, working in a hospital during peak COVID. Hardest 2 to 3 years of my working adult life. So much death and illness. It was through the grace of God I didn't bring it home and spread it to my family. Many with poor health conditions. I always have to make it known when I'm treating people. I need to know if they took any drugs or anything, because it can mess with the medication I give them. They always deny until I explain that their airways will shut down and they'll die, that they'll finally admit what they took. Story 16. Had an unknown GI bleed. Spent the night in the hospital after throwing up blood. Got endoscopy done and was misdiagnosed by the doctors having mild erosions. I was released with a script for some Instameds. I then bled for 2 weeks internally. Finally got my blood work checked by my PCP, and she immediately had me checked into the hospital. I was down to 1/4 of the blood I should have had. Turns out I had a 2-inch tumor in my stomach and required surgery. I took 4 units of blood and a unit of iron that first night in the hospital, and man, did I feel so much better. It was then I realized just how much our body compensates and how easy it is to get used to feeling like absolute poop until you don't really notice your new normal all that much. Up until you feel like you should and really notice how bad it was. But yeah, I was driving myself around, working, going about life. If I were in poor health or older, I very well could have passed out. If I had waited much longer to get checked, I could have bled to death. Hemoglobin of 4.6 when it should be over 12. I'm lucky I didn't die or pass out behind the wheel of my car, killing someone else.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.